Amlung now spoke. That was a bad day, when King Thidrek set out on this expedition, on which he himself and all his men would be bound and overcome. He should rather have stayed home in Bern and protected his kingdom. He called to Earl Hornbogi, his father, and said, "Take my helmet and bind it fast to my head, and take my shield and tie it so fast to my left hand that it cannot be loosened. I swear that I shall sooner be hewn as small as the smallest piece of meat for the stew, than be bound and have the Bertanga men press their spear shafts against my back." He went there boldly, and the sixth son of King Isung came to meet him, and they fought there proudly and hard for a long time. And now Amlung saw that the situation would remain the same for a long time, if he could not press forward even more than he had so far. He now took his sword in both hands, and even though his shield was bound to his left hand, he struck hard and fast at his opponent's helmet. But the sword would not bite, because the helmet was so hard. And still the king's son fell down, and Amlung laid himself on top of him and spoke to him. "If you wish to retain your life, you will have to give up your weapons. You will be tied up with your spear behind you, just as your kinsmen have treated my comrades. If you wish to ransom yourself, then you shall have my good comrade Fasold and my dear friend Hildibrand turned loose." And the king's son accepted this choice, and it was done so. Each now returned to his men, and their dealings had fared as young Sigurd had expected. Now Earl Hornbogi and the seventh son of the king rode together. They fought well and bravely, and Earl Hornbogi defended himself bravely and with much valor, and he offered hard combat for a long time. But because he was up against a much stronger opponent, both in strength and in regard to strong blows and brave attack, he was unable to hold his own, and he fell and was then bound. The king's son then parted from him and returned to his men, and the Bertanga men liked this outcome greatly. Högni now went out from King Thidrek's men, and he was met by the eighth son of the king, and thus began the eighth battle. This one was the hardest and most trying of all, and each struck so hard at the other that fire flew from their weapons. If it had been night instead of day, it would have been bright enough to fight. Neither would spare the other, and one could scarcely tell how they would part. And when the fight had lasted a long time, the king's son thought he would fight even harder if it would do any good. And now he wanted either to be killed or gain the victory. He tried twice as hard and dealt Högni 3 wounds, all large. And after this, Högni fell and was tied up to the spear shaft. The king's son returned quietly to his men and said that it should continue in this way. Now Thetleif the Dane went from King Thidrek's men, and against him into battle came the 9th son of King Isung. And this fight was exceedingly hard, and was bravely fought. Neither spared the other while advancing, and they fought long and hard. The blows fell so fast that one could scarcely follow them with the eyes. And they continued their fight so long that both were exhausted. And they both stuck their spear shafts into the ground, and leaned against them and rested a while. And Thetleif spoke. "If you want to keep your life and not be killed, then give up your weapons, and I shall tie you up. You will be able to live, even if you are vanquished with dishonor." And the king's son answered, "I will not give you my weapons in this fashion, even if you are a Dane and a most arrogant man, because you shall suffer a blow from my sword before I give it up. And it is not to be expected that you will have any less need to give up your weapons than I will before we part." And now they began to fight with even more ferocity than before, and they did not end their fight before both were very tired and could scarcely stand. And now it began to get dark in the evening. King Thidrek took his shield, and King Isung took his, and they went between the men and separated them. Each was wounded, and each was exhausted, so that they did not know which of the two could accomplish more, and so they parted. King Isung now spoke to King Thidrek. "The evening of this day has come, and there will be no more fighting at this time. I shall now ride back to the castle, and your men shall remain bound here, if they have not been ransomed. Tomorrow, at the light of day, we will come, and we shall prove ourselves in this struggle. I perceive that tomorrow evening, in the same place you will sit here bound, and that will be the result of your expedition into my country." And they then parted. Isung rode back to his castle, and his men were very happy. But King Thidrek and his comrades went into their tent and slept the night. In the morning, when it was light, King Isung came with his men, and King Thidrek was prepared to go out with his men. They continued the same battle with Thetleif, continuing the duel. And they now fought as before, with strength and valor, until Thetleif gained the upper hand and felled the king's son. He said he would tie him up if he would not ransom himself by letting Högni go. 9 single combats had now been fought. Hildibrand now went forth from Thidrek's men, and against him came the king's 10th son. And the duel began with great valor, and they fought a long time, until they were very tired before they quit. Hildibrand had given the king's son 3 wounds, and they were all great. Hildibrand struck still another great blow at him, but his sword broke into 2 pieces. And the king's son now advanced so boldly that he took Hildibrand by the hands and bound him, and then went back to his men. The Bertanga men were glad of this. Now King Gunnar of Niflungaland went forth, and King Isung went against him. The two kings went to the battlefield and began a fierce contest. It was a long and hard battle. Each struck the other many great blows. King Isung was the stronger of the two by far, but King Gunnar did not give ground. He offered many strong blows from his hands, and received them also. And when things had gone so for a while, King Isung became very angry that a man should stand against him for such a long time. He did not wish to endure that, but wished rather to prove himself boldly, so that the other would be defeated quickly. He struck now with all his might, and showed no consideration at all. The blow landed on King Gunnar's helmet, and broke the sword into two pieces. And it was such a great blow that there was amazement at it. But the helmet was so hard that the blow did not cut. And now King Isung grasped the spear shaft to which Högni had been bound before, and jerked it out of the ground mightily, and struck at King Gunnar's helmet so that it gave way, and King Gunnar fell, with blood coming out of his nose and mouth. King Isung took him and tied him up, and went away, saying, "May it go in this way with those men who are still to come. They have come here on a fitting errand." Now the strong Vidga went out, and against him came the 11th son of the king. And this one was more distinguished both in strength and accomplishments than all of those who had gone before. When this battle began, it was so hard, and each gave the other such mighty blows, that it was half again as much as what had gone before. No one had ever seen a more heroic battle between two men than this one. And now each went so close to the other that it hindered their blows. Now Vidga remembered what Mimung had done before, when he had borne the sword in battle, and how much trust he could put in it, and how little he had to spare it even though he gave great blows. And now he struck with complete trust in his sword, and the blow struck the helmet of the king's son, and it came off where he cut it. And the helmet was only the covering over the skull. He also took away some of the skull, but it was not a great wound. The second time he wielded his sword, he struck his leg so hard that it cut through his surcoat and his mail breeches, and so on through the leg, so that it hung by a thread. He fell then, and Vidga spoke. "You, King Isung, now have the choice. You can either free all of my comrades, or you can lose your son." King Isung answered, "I cannot have them freed, as long as I cannot see for certain that the man can be killed, and that he has not already received his death blow." And the king's son called to his father. "You must do immediately what he says, or I shall lose my life. He has the devil himself in his hands, and neither I nor any other man could stand up against him. Even though it is dear enough to ransom one man, so that one man may come free, I will grant you what you ask for him." And Vidga spoke, If you will not set free all of my comrades, I shall strike off the head of your son, and after that I shall give you your death blow, and Mimung shall not return to its sheath until all of my comrades have been freed." Vidga sprang to where his comrades were tied up and struck down the spear shafts one after the other until he had freed all of his men, and now he sprang at the man who had fought with him and was going to kill him. Young Sigurd and King Isung ran up, and when King Thidrek saw it, he sprang between them and settled the case. The settlement was that all should be both freed and untied, and that in that battle each should be counted equal to the other. And they parted, and Vidga had thus freed all of his men. What a fortunate turn of Thidrek's man's fate. The duel between Thidrek and Sigurd will be coming up in the next episode, which will also have bitter defeat and a king's glory in store for us. So stay tuned for more, and thanks for tuning in, and see you again next time, back here at Sagenheim.